They are.
Okay, got it. All right, setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Directing us to YouTube. It says we're live. Oh, there we are. We are. Now, I'm a little bit, all right, setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Oh, we're a little bit delayed. Hold on. Why is it?
That's what happened with me too. And I had to turn my volume down. I know it's going to drive you crazy because you're going to be, you're going to see my mouth move, but anyway.
Well, I just closed it out. Are we still live?
Somebody tell us. I don't see anything happening.
Well, I see that I'm very confused right now because it says we're live, but it's not. Hold on, let me go to my channel quickly because this is.
Yeah, I'm going there too. Let's see.
Oh, wait. Okay, it put it on a different stream.
That's what happened with me too. That's what happened with me too. Okay.
So this is what I'm going to have to do then. Hold on one second. That I'm going to have to figure out. Let me go ahead. So if everybody's watching, can we tell people in the chat to pop over to the other screen?
I will. This is exactly what happened with me.
Let me just delete this live that I got scheduled and we'll just be on this one because Lord have mercy. This is amazing. Oh crap. This is amazing that I actually I am not, listen, Linda, I am not tech savvy, nor do I really care to be tech savvy. I know that sounds strange, but I'm just not. Beyond doing what I do for this channel and for my other work, I just don't want to be stuck on the computer all day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that I scheduled and I'm going to delete it. And so that we are just, I understand.
People are on. There are 15 people on already on it. So, okay.
So everybody can see us.
Can everybody hear us? They're saying, yes, yeah, you're golden. Yes, yes, hello.
Hey guys. So this is a, praise Jesus. This is the miracle. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know how to match it with the scheduled live with what we just did. So sorry about that confusion. I'll try to figure that out, but we'll just keep experimenting, Angie, won't we? We'll keep experimenting with this, and eventually we will get it all figured out. Thank you guys so much for being here. I did not advertise this because I didn't know if we were going to be able to pull it off. And so if you are here, I thank you so much for being here. Hopefully, as we get more savvy at it and better at it, we will be able to advertise it more. So we're not sitting here picking our noses going like, where the hell are we? What's going on? I still don't know how to be fancy and enter in the theme song and all that kind of stuff, guys. So I am literally just a girl from Georgia filming in my bedroom right now. And I know people like to create a lot of conspiracies about us on YouTube, but literally listen, when I was in high school, I learned the Dewey Decimal System. I'm sure most of you did too. So
the card catalog.
Yeah, you had to go earn you couldn't just Google it. You had to go on a scavenger hunt for that encyclopedia. And if someone had, or that book, if someone had checked it out, you were screwed until they brought it back. So anyway, Angie, how you doing today? I know we've been talking for a while, but
I'm good. I'm eating my last garden tomato. So I'm going to have to go to the farmer's market next time. It's time to pull the tomato vines out of the garden and plant peas.
I'll come with you to the farmer's market. I keep meaning to get to Athens and come hang out with you because literally we don't live that far away, guys, from each other. And so, I have the person who does my opening song on this channel is my friend who lives in Athens, Josh McKay. If you guys don't know, I know we talked about Athens a lot, but Athens, Georgia, for those that don't know, is it's a cool little town. It's where the University of Georgia is, and it's a very iconic music town. So you've got REM, that band REM, Shiny Happy People, like we spoke about last time, and Losing My Religion, those people. B-52s. Who else? I know there's so many. It's Widespread Panic.
And I know a lot of the younger ones just because I live here and like Modern Skirts is one of my favorite ones. I've highlighted them on my Instagram before on my stories, but a whole lot of bands here, and a lot of bands that aren't from here play here all the time. You got the Drive-By Truckers, Jason Isbell, who's really, really big, got his start here with the Drive-By Truckers, wrote most of their songs in the beginning, I believe. And now has branched out on his own and got all these Grammys,
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, there was when I was in my early mid 20s, there was a band from Athens that was really popular. I don't know if they're still popular or not, called Of Montreal.
Yes.
And they're from Athens. The only reason why their band is called is some little Georgia trivia for you. The reason why their band is called Of Montreal is because the lead singer's girlfriend at the time was from Montreal, and so that's why they made themselves that name. And some of their music got bought out from some commercials, and so they ended up, you would recognize some of their songs from different commercials that were big in the early 2000s and stuff. So Flournoy Holmes, who is in a band with my boyfriend, he is a very famous artist from Atlanta, from Athens, Georgia. He lives in Atlanta now. For those who are familiar with Southern rock, the Allman Brothers, there's a very famous Eat a Peach album that Flournoy drew. And he also does a lot of the artwork for Widespread Panic as well for their album covers. So yeah, there's a lot. Athens is like, it's kind of got like that half old Southern feeling to it with that very eccentric, artsy feeling to it as well. Great music school, like the University of Georgia has a lot of like they're one of the best music schools. They're like one of the best, if not the best, veterinary school for veterinary medicine. That's where my father went to veterinary school. Really good at University of Georgia. If you go to Georgia, it's a really good school. So anyway, but Angie, since we made it live,
we finally got it live.
Miracle. It's a miracle. And again, if you guys know, if there's anybody watching that knows how to get the live to connect to the scheduled live
from Zoom.
I can do it when it's just me, because if it's just me, you just do it on your YouTube back channel. It's super easy. But when you're pulling in somebody else, of course, you have to pull them in from their location, so it becomes a totally different system altogether. So if anybody knows how to connect the two, let me know, because sister over here I am not. Listen, if I did not have a boyfriend, I would not have a YouTube channel, because I didn't even know how to upload a video. I was like, what's uploading mean? I don't know when I first started.
That's like whenever people used to tell me back in 2009, you should have a blog. And I was like, what is a blog? I don't know. And, now I do, but I just, we fake it till we make it.
We do. We fake it till we make it. Do you remember? I know I'm like 10 years younger than you, Angie, but you might remember the show Ren and Stimpy on Nickelodeon in the 90s.
Yeah. It was. I never watched it.
I didn't really like that show as a kid, but they would have this one of the characters had like a pet log, your log. Well, anyway, there was a little theme song that went to it. And one time I was up in Philadelphia. This was long before I was going back and forth to India, but I was practicing with my teacher in Philadelphia. I'd fly back and forth. And one of my Shala mates, an older lady, she since passed away, but sadly, I loved her, but she kept a blog about yoga. And she was hysterical. So I actually really liked her blog because she was funny. But we were sitting in the shala in the back room after practice one day, and someone was asking her about her blog. And she goes, yeah, my husband just makes fun of me for it. He goes, your blog, nobody reads your blog, your blog, nobody reads your blog. Every time I think of blogs, I think of her, because actually people did read her blog because she was so funny. But anyway, guys, well, I can't see the chat, so I have no idea if there are questions being asked or what's going on.
I'll watch it. I'll keep watching it. So
let me know if we got trolls, because I attract a lot of trolls. So means that we're doing something right, you guys. If you're not doing something right, then you're not attracting trolls. So anyway, what we were going to talk about today, Angie, and of course, once this live ends, hopefully it's going to stay on.
Catherine is watching. I just saw Catherine Edwards is watching. She says, hi, girls.
Oh, hi, Catherine. We're trying to figure it out, Catherine.
Catherine said, I wanted to do the same too, as didn't renew my StreamYard.
Oh, yeah. Listen, okay, let me tell you guys I feel like this live is a little bit more relaxed than I'm pretty much this. Angie knows me off camera too. I feel like I'm pretty much the same on camera and off camera, but I feel like I'm more relaxed when on this show than I am in an actual like recorded show. But yeah, StreamYard, I'm gonna tell you guys, I refuse to buy StreamYard, and this is why. It's vanity purposes only.
It makes you look
StreamYard
makes you
makes
look
you look
dead.
old. You look old on StreamYard. I thought it was just me at first. Like Shanti and Mornay use StreamYard. There's a lot of people I work with that use StreamYard and I've worked with in the past. And I would sign on. I'd be like, holy shit. It's like when you go to Target and you think you're looking all cute and you see the camera at the self checkout and you look like a gargoyle, and you're like, somebody let me leave the house looking like this. But StreamYard makes you look old. And so I just really don't want to do StreamYard. I want to stay on Zoom because Zoom, and even it was so funny. So Angie knows my boyfriend who's very private he's lives a very private life, but he had to do something recently on a group meeting and it was StreamYard. And so he was doing it and he got off and he looked so devastated. And he was like, do I really look that rough? And I laughed. I was like, no, boo, that's just StreamYard. Everyone looks rough on StreamYard.
Everybody does. They don't have where you can put a filter on yourself.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't even think does Zoom have one? I know in editing services you can put, when you're editing, you can put filters on.
Okay.
I lighten I brighten it a lot because it might get kind of a little dark or something. But yeah, no I don't know much about StreamYard because it makes me look old, so I'm never going to use it. So if somebody from StreamYard is watching, maybe think about whatever software Zoom uses. Maybe that's would be better for business. But anyway, guys, I know Angie and I have been talking a lot about narcissism. I feel like narcissism is truly like a trigger word nowadays. And if you guys yesterday, I released an episode, the first episode I did with Claire Headley, who I have such great respect for. She is, and we talked a little bit about this because she's a cult survivor, and a lot of these organizations, these high control organizations follow the same abuse handbook that narcissists do. And so a lot of times when you're in a narcissistically abusive relationship, mostly like a romantic relationship, it's like being in a cult of one. And I heard that first on Andrew Gold's channel, and it really resonated with me because even though I've been very lucky, as I've said with my friend Kelly Teal from Nexium, who I've been very lucky in my life. I've never gotten sucked into like an organization. Not saying that I just feel lucky because I've always been with good yoga teachers that knew boundaries. Like my teacher in India has very strong boundaries. When you go to India, you have to find your own place to live. He doesn't help you with that. You have to rent an apartment yourself. There's a lot of hands off, which is healthy and that's good. So I'm very lucky that I've never gotten sucked into something that could turn, and anything can turn into a cult. There are yoga cults out there. There are running cults. There are gym cults. There are business cults. There are science cults. Like everything can turn into that, depending on who's in charge of the organization. And usually in order to be in charge of a cult, you're going to have to be a narcissist or a psychopath, because normal people typically don't try to control that heavily with others. So yeah. And so this is a big word and Angie, or a big trigger word, this whole narcissism. And I have been in a extremely narcissistically abusive relationship in the past, which I've spoken about. And the mental gymnastics, the mental abuse and the conditioning you go through with that person, you are conditioned to start doubting yourself. You are conditioned to think you're the bad guy. And a lot of this goes through the process of what we call trauma bonding. And we see this. And so I just thought this was a really important topic to talk about, because if you look at the patterns of trauma bonding, you can see it where it's happening in your own life too. And if you are in a situation where you're in a relationship, whether it's romantic, friendship, business, and you feel like you're walking on eggshells, or you feel like your whole life has become dedicated to this person or this organization, look at these steps we're going to talk about today. And maybe you feel like it's your fault. Maybe this will help to kind of like loosen up that grip of control, so you can start looking at this from a more complex place of understanding that it's not necessarily you. It's probably you're with the narcissist. Does that make sense, Angie?
It does to me. I feel like, well, there were so many different kinds of addictions, and I feel like I'm a trauma addict because of what it does to your body.
Yeah.
So trauma is, let me see how to word it. It is something that happens to you, but then it also creates something inside of you. So it
It
creates
releases chemicals.
chemicals, and it, cortisol. I mean, it changes your whole hormonal makeup, and then you get kind of addicted to that feeling. So, I wrote down that it is a trauma bonding is a physiological addiction to a narcissist, because they love bomb. And so then you're addicted to that. Like that feels good. But
Yeah. And then
then
when
they
you get knocked
discard.
down, yeah, you're
Mhm.
the disregarding phase, and then you're fighting for that. And that's what happens. And we'll look, I have pulled up a great article, but you're exactly right. So that's what happens with narcissists. And in the last narcissistic, and you're right, and a lot of that what happens too if you look at your life. Angie and I think both have a lot of similar experiences in our childhood where you are taught, so many people grow up with abuse and they don't realize it's abuse, because if you're getting physically attacked, then you can say, yeah, that's abuse. But when it's emotional and mental, you don't necessarily comprehend what's happening to you.
Yeah.
And I've recently learned of this term called parentification. Have you ever heard of that, Angie? Parentification?
No. Mm-mm.
It's basically, well, in broad strokes, parentification is when, like, especially like an older sibling, is a lot of responsibility of the parent is put on the older sibling to help raise the younger siblings. And that older sibling then is ripped of a childhood and has to be a parent. It's called parentification.
Yes. I
It
used
can,
to be this way with my brother. I
yeah,
have
it
one
causes a
sibling.
lot of trauma for the
Uh-huh.
child that's having to take on that responsibility when they're
Uh-huh.
not cognitively ready
Yeah.
to raise, like a 12-year-old raising a 5-year-old.
I
And
remember trying to take care of his Christmas. I could tell that like my dad was just gonna, you know, be drunk and not even realize it was Christmas. And I would go and use my babysitting money and go get my brother, you know, presents and things and try to make him have, make sure he had a Christmas. Yeah. That may have only happened 1 year, but it's so,
that,
such a
well, I
big
was gonna
memory.
say, so like the extreme case is that a child will take on the role of the parent. But I also think there's like sub cases where the child is expected to mature too quickly. Like, we know, and it's interesting when I was talking to Claire Headley, this is something I want to talk to her about next time, because Scientology, from what I understand, they believe that children are big beings in small bodies. And so therefore children are not treated like children, they're treated like little adults. And when you're looking at things like reincarnation, yeah, they are big beings in small bodies. However, the body, the avatar that the person is in, has the brain of a 5-year-old, of a 6-year-old.
Mhm.
Just like your body is what's dictating the hormonal understanding of consciousness in that moment. And so in any other faith or religious beliefs where reincarnation is taught, they treat children like children, because the spirit comes into a body. It's just like your liver and your kidneys are the age of your body. Your brain is also a muscle. Its purpose is to problem solve. And my brain is 40 years old. It's not 20 million years old, or however old my soul is. The soul is something different, but the brain is what's leading the way. So the cognitive abilities of understanding and taking on responsibility should be age appropriate. Just because a person has possibly lived many, many lives and been through many, many situations, a 5-year-old is still a 5-year-old, right? You're not going to talk to that 5-year-old about adult things, adult concepts, even though you believe in reincarnation, because in that moment they're 5. And
Mhm.
and I know for me, especially if I had children, I would want to preserve their innocence for as long as possible. I remember my mother saying that at one point, like trying to get your child to hold on to that innocence for as long as they possibly can before the world smacks them upside the head. And so when you're looking at children with the parentification, I look at like my school system that I was in, which I now know was a narcissistic system. And they were demanding especially academically, things from us at too young of an age.
Yeah.
And so that caused trauma. And I'll give you guys an example. When I was a freshman in high school, As you guys know, I've said this many times, I come from a family of doctors. Brice is my mother's maiden name. They're all freaking doctors for like generations. I'm the black sheep, or Ashanti says, the sparkly sheep, because I went the total opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a freshman and I was in my freshman biology class in high school, I actually like biology. Biology is fast. It's one of the sciences that is actually fascinating to me. I would come home at night, and I mean, I'm a pretty smart girl. I feel like I'm a pretty smart person. I pick up on things pretty quickly, unless it's technology.
Yeah.
But I would have to get my dad's a veterinarian. So I would get my dad to help me with my biology homework because it was so hard. And I remember the first time I asked my dad to help me with my biology homework, we were sitting at the dining room table. That's where he would like write checks and pay the bills back in the 90s before the internet. I had my textbook open. And my dad stopped for a moment and he said, "Hold on a second." And he picked up my book and he started flipping through it and reading and looking at it. And he took my book and he stood up and he went into the kitchen, which was right next to the dining room. And I have this memory. My mother was an early childhood development major. So my mother understands how brains grow. And I heard my dad say to my mom, "Why is our 14-year-old child studying biology from a medical school textbook?" And my mother took the book and looked at it. And my dad was like, "This is not appropriate. This is a book you use." He's like, "This book is used in medical school. She's 14. What are they doing? What is the school doing? This is not okay. They need biology books that are age appropriate for a 14-year-old. 14-year-olds don't know if they're going to medical. Why is she looking at a medical?" And so my mother ended up going to the school and complaining and saying, "This is not appropriate. This is too complex. This biology that you're teaching is too complex. These kids don't even know how to drive cars yet."
Yeah.
Some of them don't even have their periods yet. And you're trying to teach. So that, and of course the school did nothing. They kept the textbook. It was very challenging, but that's why university was really easy for a lot of us, because we're like, "Oh yeah, we already have this textbook." But anyway, but that in my opinion, that would be a subset of parentification, because the child then is expected to understand things and do things that are not that the child is not cognitively ready for.
Right. Makes sense. It does.
And that causes trauma. That can cause emotional trauma and abuse. And so, yeah, that's, and I think that can kind of be a subsect of parentification, because you always want, and when you look at childhood development, yeah, some kids are going to learn faster than others. You even look at like puberty, some kids develop faster than others. I know for me, I learned how to walk really early. So there's an age range, right? It's an age range. But anyway, so that is a form of abuse. But when you grow up in a situation where there's a lot of abuse and a lot of narcissistic abuse, that becomes your reality. And you get stuck in this like fight or flight where you don't even realize you're in fight or flight. And so what happens is you start to attract that in your adult life as well. And you start to subconsciously, it's not a conscious thing, but subconsciously you are confusing. If you look at a romantic relationship, if you grew up in an abusive home where there was mental abuse, or you had a golden child or a scapegoat, or you got in trouble easily, anything like that, then you're confusing that walking on eggshells with love. And that's what I did for a very long time throughout my 20s. I always laughed and would say that I like the bad boys, which I do. There is a side of me that does. I'm not going to marry an accountant like that. I think my parents knew that by the time I was 16, that I wasn't going to be marrying a guy who had a corporate job, right? I love the guys covered in tattoos. I loved, my ex in LA was the lead singer of a band, but with that being said, I was confusing the bad boy with abuse.
Right.
And you can be a fringe, like Angie knows my boyfriend now. He's very fringy, right? Like he's covered in tattoos, he skateboards, he wants to get a spirit board. Like he's very fringy, but he's the kindest person, isn't he? And he's like the kindest, most loving human being you will ever, it's the first relationship I've ever been in where I trust him completely. Like he would never do anything. That trust is so strong. But it took me going through therapy and starting to unwind, because it's all subconscious, right? Like it's all subconscious. Like in our conscious mind, we're not going to go there and seek out abuse. In our conscious mind, we don't want to be someone that's going to cheat on us, or that's going to make us, devalue us, or, but it's a subconscious reaction based on what's been like programmed into us. And so I think the first step in this, and so I want to say that to anybody, like if you realize like you've been doing this and it's not, first of all, it's not your fault that you got here. It's just how you've been trained. Basically, it's how you've been programmed, but it is your responsibility to start to course correct. And I would highly suggest trauma therapy, because that's what I knew. I went through a long trauma therapy, all that kind of stuff, was single for a while, went off to India by myself. And when I started to attract healthy men, that's when I knew that my therapy and my healing had worked. Because good men, before that, the men coming in, yeah, they were hot. Like, hello, I don't date ugly men. If I'm vain about StreamYard, obviously I'm going to care. But, they were attractive men. They were good looking men, but they weren't nice. They weren't good men, and I kept attracting that same type of person because that was something broken in me, that like attracts like, that I felt like that was what love was, because that's what I had been trained to believe love was. And so I had to retrain myself. And you really, like I said, you don't really know if the healing is working until you see the effects of it out in your outside and in your surroundings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because like you say, like attracts like, where everything is a mirror of us. So
so what we're going to do, guys,
on the inside. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And once I healed that part of me that was broken from my childhood that I didn't even know was broken, that's when things shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, the funny thing is between my sister and me. So my sister is 3.5 years younger than me, 4 years younger than me. And she's always like, her husband, my brother-in-law, is literally their like couple goals. She met Steven when she was in college, and she's 36 now. They're both 36. And so they've been together for a year, like, God, probably 16 years now. And he is amazing. He's an incredible husband. He's an incredible father. So my sister did not. So you can be in the same household with siblings and have two different outcomes of children. They can have two different results. So don't ever second guess yourself of like, well, my siblings didn't have, or my, no, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So is there anything you want to add to that before I pull this website up, Angie?
Well, I just think that that's true. I see Donald Strickland just tuned in, and I want to say, just read some of the comments there. Steve says the hardest thing is when you realize you may very well be the adult in the room and you're still a teen, basically still a kid. Yeah. That was me a lot.
Steve, that just kind of gave me one. I kind of hold some tears back. Yeah. That's parentification, Steve. And that's not, no child should be, as your kid gets older, you want them to start taking on more responsibilities slowly, but you should not be expected. That's why 15-year-olds don't get mortgages, right? That's why you learn how to drive when you're still living at home, right? Because you're slowly, and that's one of the beautiful things I always felt like about going off to college or university, because we know education is what it is, but in that moment for those 4 years, or for the fun people, the 5 years, when you're there a little longer, you're kind of in this like halfway transitional period where you've got adult responsibilities because you're living away from home. You have to get yourself to class, all that kind of stuff, but you're still in the safety net of still being a student and your parents are around. I mean, I'm 40 years old and I still need my mom, like but that's the beautiful thing, is you're learning slowly how to be that adult. You're learning slowly you're not going to leave a 5-year-old at home by himself. No. For a day, Yeah. I mean, the first time my mother left us home alone, I was the oldest, and I remember this, and I was probably 10, 11, maybe 12, maybe a little younger, because 12 I started babysitting, so probably like 10. And my mother said, all right, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'll be gone for 30 minutes. It was in the middle of the day. It was like a Saturday. And of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. And Miss Dot, our neighbor, she's like, Miss Dot is home.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need anything, I'm sure she had talked to Miss Dot. You just go knock on Miss Dot's door, but it's only going to be 30 minutes. You can look at the clock. And so my mom ran down to I know she didn't do a full grocery, ran down Piggly Wiggly. She probably bought herself some Tab. My mother loves Tab. If y'all don't know what Tab is, look it up. That's if you're from Georgia, you should absolutely know what Tab is.
Tab is.
Tab is. So bought herself some Tab and probably came back because just so it was a 30-minute window just to see how I would do. And it built up from there. So you kind of want that with kids. You want them to slowly start to step into being able to take care of themselves. And so anyway, so I'm going to pull this website up, guys, because I thought this website was awesome when I was kind of looking up things for trauma bonding. Here, pull it up a little bit.
Donald Strickland just said he's calling your channel, Esoteric Atlanta, is the Great Awakening channel.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we are awakening. We are a Great Awakening channel, even if we don't know how to do YouTube properly. I need like a 22-year-old to come work for me just to show me how to do this stuff. People keep asking me if I'm going to go on TikTok, and I'm like, what's the TikTok? I'm not really sure what that is. But thank you, Donald. That means a lot. That means a lot. And a lot of that Great Awakening, it's not just, and I keep saying this, yeah, it's shocking to learn what's been going on in the world around us. But the big crux of this is you and learning how to love yourself and learning how to reclaim your power. And part of that is, it's like the Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the first step is admitting that there's a problem, that you recognize that there is a problem. And once that happens, you can then do something about it. So this is a great, if I can figure out how to do it, after we get off the live, I will put this in the chat or put this in the description box, this link, if I can figure out how to do it. So don't hold me to that, guys. I'm trying, this old dog is trying to learn some new tricks here, but this is called the Men Project. And I really liked what they had to say about trauma bonding, because I don't think a lot of people really understand. When you first hear trauma bonding, I don't think people actually understand what it is. They might think it's like, oh, two people got in a car accident together, so therefore they're bonded. Yeah, you're bonded to an experience, but trauma bonding is actually different. So they say trauma bonds created in some abusive relationships can make it difficult and seemingly impossible to stay or leave the harmful relationship. Trauma bonds to abusive relationships as adults often are perpetuations of trauma bonds first formed in early childhood, which is what we were saying. So you've already probably, if you're in a trauma bonded situation with a romantic partner, you've probably already been through that same bonding as a child. You just didn't realize that's what it was. The trauma bond created in some abusive relation. Okay, sorry, I already read that paragraph. In romantic partnerships or other intimate relationships with interpersonal violence, trauma bonding takes place when the victim experiencing the harm has experienced early childhood trauma from disrupted attachment styles by primary caregivers, creating an unhealthy relationship pattern connection, which follows them into adulthood, what we were just saying. So let's go down here, trauma bonding and its implications on relationships. First of all, what is a trauma bond? As the phrase indicates, it's a bond or connection between two people, one who is an abusive person and the other who is the target of their abuse. Trauma bonding occurs when the victim has a psychological response to abuse, which develops into a deep sense of affection, empathy, or sympathy for their abuser.
Yes, and I know for me, I make excuses. I try to say, like about my dad, I would say, well, he had all these, he didn't know who his mom and dad were. His mom died when he was a baby. His mom had him out of wedlock. So that's why he's so furious with me every time when I was like a teenager or 14 years old, boyfriends or anything. He didn't want, he was like, you're going to end up just like my mother, pregnant, young and stuff. I mean, just it took all that out on me growing up, but then I would come up with excuses for him all the time. Yeah.
And this is the hardest. This is why people who've never been in an abusive relationship, this is what they don't understand. Just because you're with somebody who abuses you doesn't mean you don't care for that person. Mm-hmm. And that is what the abuser did. They got you in a situation where they actually love you. And so they can be mean to you and abuse you and you're still going to stick around, right? So we have to, when you're looking at abuse from an outside position, it's so clear what's happening. But when you're in it, you're in what they call the fog, which stands for fear, obligation, and guilt. So you're afraid of the abuser, you feel obligated to the abuser, and you feel guilt when you think bad thoughts about the abuser.
Yes.
It puts you in a fog, right? So
Yeah.
let's see. People who experience childhood trauma bonds and early attachment disruptions that are not resolved are highly susceptible to forming trauma bonds in toxic adult relationships where abuse occurs. The form of bonding is a positive. Some people mistakenly believe a trauma bond is when two people share a deep connection over past trauma, which is what I just said about a car accident that has experience. In some cases, this type of bonding could be positive and is not within the meaning of trauma bond, which takes place in an abusive relationship. So if you go through something traumatic with someone, that is not a trauma bond. And survivors of a bad experience, as they're saying, that can be a positive relationship because you can lean on each other, but that is not what they call a trauma bond. All right, trauma bond form and find strength in current relationships because the past trauma bonds and attachments of dysfunction being perpetrated within the present relationship. It's destructive. A trauma bond develops when the abusers use covert forms of abuse that make the victim believe they need the abuser's care and validation to feel whole. They become very dependent on the abusive relationship, whether family, romantic, friend, or work related. So covert forms of abuse is like coercive stuff, manipulation. Well, if you loved me, you would do this. If you loved me, you would do that. My narcissistic ex, this is before I was teaching Mysore. This is before I even went to India. I would get up early in the morning, like 4 o'clock in the morning, to go practice as a student in a shala. And so anybody knows who follows an Ashtanga schedule, you have to go to bed pretty early. And in a lot of couples where one practices and one doesn't, if it's a healthy relationship, the partner that doesn't practice Mysore is still very respectful of the fact that their partner is going to go to bed early. They keep the house quiet. Even if they don't go to bed right away, they're very respectful of the fact that their partner is in bed and they join them in bed later. And then when the Mysore partner gets up at 4 a.m., they shut the alarm off and they sneak into the bathroom, get ready, and try not to wake there. That's a healthy relationship, right? Where you're respecting each other, you're caring for each other, you're nurturing each other in both of your perspective means of self-care. Well, with my ex, what he would do is I would go to bed and then he would turn the music up really loud throughout the house and play it loud until like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I would try to ignore it. I mean, the house would be shaking. And then he'd get in bed at 1. And then when my alarm went off at 4 for me to get up and go to Mysore, he would scream and yell at me and tell him I was abusing him because I was getting up so early.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's a covert form of abuse. It's a manipulation.
Yeah. I used to couldn't even like read in bed with a book light. Like I would, this person would be asleep. Completely asleep. I was being as quiet as I could, and just using a little book light and kind of holding up the bed covers like this, and that was not okay even, that wasn't even okay. Just, yeah, that seems flip-flop, but it's the same.
It's the same.
Because I did everything I could to try to not, trigger him in some way or, and get out of the bed in the middle of the night. I'd be rolling out, or even in the morning, like I'm just going to ease out of bed and, go do my morning devotion. And that was too much,
They wait for opportunities to shame you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I will say, so I'm in a very healthy relationship right now. So
yeah,
like I almost said my husband, my boyfriend, I'm not married, my boyfriend.
Pretty much.
He was like it.
Common law.
listen, y'all. If something were to happen to him, I know I get everything. If something were to happen to me, he takes over the channel. No, I'm just kidding. But I know, like sometimes with like interviews I do with people, there have been times where the only possible time to do an interview would be past the time where typically we would be in bed because he does get up very early in the morning for work.
Yeah.
Around 3:30 he gets up. And so like if I have a person that can only come on like 8 o'clock at night or something, I'll talk to him about it and we work something out so that I can do the interview and he, or I'll do it in the kitchen or, or he'll sleep on the sofa for a minute because we're in the bedroom. And so there's so I don't ever just schedule something like that without talking to him first, because I want to make
No.
sure, because this is his home too. And frankly, he's the one that supports us. He's the one that makes most of the money and supports us. So, and so that's
It's a small apartment too, so you
Yeah.
can't really
you
go.
can't go. And when you're in the middle, like Atlanta is the New York of the South. So what I pay in rent is more than what most people pay their mortgages, because we're right in the middle of the freaking city, like right in the middle. And so it's very small. It's very loud anyway. And so when he needs to go to bed, we have to figure, I want to be respectful of that, because he does have to get up at 3:30 in the morning and go to work. And I don't want to, so we talk about it, and that's healthy, right? So he understands that this guest can only come on at this time. And so we figure something out, we make it work. And there's a respect that I have for him and that he has for me, so that we can get our work done, if that makes sense. Right. And so,
Right.
but if I were with a narcissist, they love to sabotage. Oh, narcissists do. So like if I were with my ex and I was doing this channel, you guys would hear him. He would be making lots of noise. He would be stomping around. He would be making it seem like I was an inconvenience to him. He'd be trying, they try to sabotage like my ex keeping me up late, getting mad at me when I got, that's also that's not just a way to abuse me, but it's a way to sabotage my yoga practice. Right. So that's, anyway. So they become so addicted, they're willing to set aside the destructive phases, which prevent healthy, loving, emotional connections from ever taking place. They remain.
And just real quick, the noises that you might be hearing in my house right now are not coming from a narcissist. They're coming from my daughter, who probably just got up to make her lunch.
So, yeah, I was about to say, well,
I'm in my kitchen.
I'm in my kitchen. Construction next door, so. Yeah, that's different, guys. If you're on a YouTube channel and your kid or your spouse is sneaking around to like get a sandwich, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the intentional.
Yes.
I'll tell you guys a funny story. So my dog, Ravi, hates closed doors. Like closed doors piss him off. And so if you go into a room, you have to make sure the door is shut completely, because he will come push it open. So like if you go to the bathroom, you got to make sure that door is totally shut, because he will come and pop it open. And there have been times where I've come in here to film and I thought I shut the door all the way, but I haven't shut it all the way. And Ravi will push the door open and stand there and look at me. And my boyfriend will come and like call Ravi out and slowly try to shut the door, because, so that stuff, that's not. Speaking of our fur babies,
I know he's been hiding under the house, because I let him out this morning early. I know we had a thunderstorm here and he's really scared of it, and so you can't even find him for a while. He hides under the house until
even when it's over, he'll still hide.
Yeah. You want to say hey to everyone, Rosie? Okay. Right. It's live. She just let Nugget in. He finally came around from out from under the house, but
we had a wild storm this morning. So
it was
Angie, like an hour apart from me. It was wild. Like I woke up, Ravi woke me up. He always wakes me up, and he never wakes my boyfriend up, I guess because I'm the mom. He nudged me awake at 2:00 in the morning because he had to go pee. So I took him outside to pee at 2 a.m. and I was like, if Catherine's still watching, he had a little bit of infection. So that was happening for a while. And I was like, why is he taking me out at 2:00 in the morning again to pee? This is wild. I hope he's not sick again. And then after my boyfriend got up and went to work, I got up with Ravi. It was like 4, where I normally would take him out, and it started thundering and lightning. And it was I was like, oh, he could sense that the storm was coming, and he wanted to go ahead and go to the bathroom before the storm came. So yeah, that's why we popped the light. We were supposed to do this at 10 a.m. and I popped it back to 11 because I started feeling really nauseated. I think it was the pressure from the storm. So that's why we had to push it back a little bit.
Here's kind of a funny comment. I know you're trying to get through this website, but Steve says the difference between quietly making lunch versus using pots and pans to pay tribute to Van Halen's greatest hits.
Steve is hysterical. I will say Steve is in our Signal support group. Steve, you are hysterical. And I appreciate funny people. I appreciate a sense of humor. Steve is awesome. So thank you. Yeah, it is totally different when you're trying to sneak a sandwich out versus, getting the band back together while your loved one is on a live. The worst is if you were on a live when you were like a guest on somebody else's channel and your loved one is doing that, that's the worst. If you were, I mean, ever since I've been on YouTube, I've been in healthy relationships. So, you know, but I could definitely, after my experience with narcissists, I could see how they would really try to like make you look like an ass
Yep.
on a live show with somebody else. All right. So I think this is important. It says it's not the same as codependency. So trauma bonding, although there is a lot of codependency in a narcissistic relationship, it's not the same as trauma bonding. So trauma bonded victim is not the same as one who is codependent, although both can exist in the same relationship. Codependent believes the abusive person needs them to care for them and places the abuser's needs over their own. Codependency enables the abuser's unhealthy power and control to continue. Whereas with a trauma bonded victim, they are simply addicted to the relationship and see the abuser's actions as love. Notwithstanding the harm the abusive person causes, trauma bonds do not take place in a very trauma bonds do not take place in very abusive situations, but once they are formed, they are very hard to break. And I want to say something about codependency too, because I was not aware of this until I went through therapy. So my therapist made a really good point about this, and I just feel like I just need to say this. So I think we have in our mind someone who is codependent. We have this like archetype in our mind of somebody who is needy, someone who really needs to be with that other person, and that's not always what codependency is. And I'll use myself as an example. As my therapist said to me, I am a very independent person. I'm extremely independent. Listen, Linda, I have traveled the world multiple times, mostly by myself. I have no problem getting on an airplane and flying to India by myself. The first time I ever went to India, I knew no one, right? I'm very independent. I could live by myself just fine. I'm very, very independent. However, when it came to relationships, that's where I was codependent.
Yeah.
So you could have somebody that for every part of my life, I was independent, except for when it came to men, when it came to my romantic relationships, because that is what I learned as a child. So I want you guys to kind of take that in, that it's not one or the other. Like you're not like totally independent and totally codependent. Anyway. All right. In a trauma bonded relationship, it's impossible to understand why you keep going back to this abusive person, and it is impossible to imagine living without them. Rock in a hard place, right? The confusion for the person experiencing trauma bonding combined with the incredible pull to the relationship makes the abused person feels that the bond is true love, but it is not. And I had that said to me once too. So before I went through therapy, I confused drama in a relationship, like drama, as passion. Like if there was fighting or, cheating or all these things, I confuse that with passion.
David says no sound, but I don't see anybody else complaining. Hopefully
Can you guys hear us? I can't see the chat, so Angie has to read it because I can't see it.
I've got my cell phone sitting over here where I can look at that. I'm looking at the chat on my cell phone. So
all right, well, let us know, guys. If David, if it's just your computer, it might just be
oh, it looks like he deleted that comment. So maybe.
Oh, okay, cool. It might have just been sometimes I've done this before. It's probably a boomer thing to do. I'm gonna use Gen Z saying, but I'll accidentally hit like on the YouTube screen, you can hit the volume button accidentally and takes the sound away. And I'm like, what happened? I accidentally hit the button. So
Steve says he can hear just fine. So
okay,
we're back.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. All right. So trauma bonded individuals experience cognitive dissonance. We've talked about that a lot on this channel, when there's a significant disconnect between what's actually occurring in the relationship versus what's being able to be seen. Was actually occurring in the relationship versus being able to see the harmful behavior with a clear sense of understanding, right? Because there's that confusion, right? And so what I was saying at first about like, I was confusing like drama for passion when in a healthy relationship. And I heard this said when I was going to trauma therapy. I heard this said on the radio, and I really took it in by somebody else versus what my therapist had said. Usually the healthiest of relationships that you see within two people, it's a very meh relationship. Not a lot of fighting, very calm. From the outside, if you're used to yelling and screaming and all that kind of stuff, it might seem kind of boring, right? But it's not boring. it's healthy because there's no need to create drama, right? You both individuals,
Because you're not codependent.
right? You're
Because
not
You're
codependent.
fine just being yourself. Let that person be themselves,
Yeah, and there's still passion there though, even if from the outside the relationship seems boring. And let me tell you guys, romantically speaking, it's way better with someone you trust completely than someone you don't really trust but you think is like, does that make sense? Like someone that's not going to cheat on you, because that's a big thing for me. I am monogamous all the way. Like cheating is a hard boundary for me.
Mhm.
And actually when my boyfriend and I started dating, we had a sit down conversation about boundaries. And he brought it up. He was the one that said we need to talk about boundaries, and I said I'm monogamous. And he said, good, me too, that's a hard boundary for me, no cheating. And I said absolutely. So when you're with somebody that is not going to hurt you or betray you in that way, romantically it's so much better. Even
I have
though
a friend that told me during her divorce, her husband, who was leaving her for another woman, wanted her to go to counseling with him to is it called polyamorous?
listen,
She's like, absolutely not.
but y'all, like I've known people like if that's what you want to do, you do you, boo. Whatever works for you. For me, that's not going to fly. That is not going to fly with me. I do not believe in that. I know energetically when you have multiple partners, you are sharing karma with those people. And so if you're cheating on your partner, you're bringing somebody else's karma into that relationship, and that is not fair to that other person that they don't know that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But polyamory, they do know. Listen,
that didn't work for Angie either.
I was gonna say something kind of crude. I was gonna be like, one bean pole is all I can handle.
One bean pole.
one-eyed monster is all I can handle. So
Snorted.
and I'm sure my boyfriend would say the same thing. One taco is all he can handle.
Yeah.
So, but when you're so if you are someone that was like me that confused romance for like if you confuse like yelling and screaming and all that stuff as being passion, you confuse the two, abuse for passion, and you go into a relationship that's healthy, just because there's none of that yelling and screaming. I'm just telling you, if you're somebody who has been cheated on in the past, all that kind of stuff, when you're with somebody that is not going to do that to you and is not going to betray you that way and really honors you and values you as their partner, even though there's not any yelling and screaming in the relationship, the intimate side of the relationship is way better because you can trust that person, right? Especially for a woman, because women are in very vulnerable situations when it comes to that. So if any needed to hear that, it's not boring, and it might appear boring from the outside, but it's not boring in that way, if that makes sense. So, all right, why is trauma bonding so strong? All right, in relationships, there is an intrinsic human need for a secured attachment, along with a sense of emotional intimacy and safety with people we perceive to be partners, caregivers, protectors, or defenders. There's a lot of safety when you're with someone who's healthy, as I was just saying. That's a good word to use, is safety. We first form attachments to our primary caregivers. Healthy attachments in our formative years encourage healthy relationships and connections, hopefully with a healthy love that is open, safe, and encouraging in their autonomous endeavors. When early childhood attachment is disrupted or inconsistent, we become attracted to similar unhealthy attachments as adults. So exactly as we said in the beginning, it all comes back to your childhood. All right, let's go down. Trauma bonding versus love. They mistake the craving for the positive feedback or the positive. Let me read that again. They mistake the craving for the positive feelings for love, emotional support, and safety, enabling a strong bond to firmly root during the trauma bond cycle of the abusive situation. Their obsession with the positive stages of the cycle blind them to, or at least make them willing to tolerate the abuse and classify it as less important. Like Angie said, you go, oh, they must have been having a bad day. Or, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. That made them mad. It's my fault, right?
Right.
They mischaracterize the abuser's false promises or doses of affection as love, making it nearly impossible for them to distinguish true love from an abusive situation. But a trauma bond is not love. The regular interpretation of positive attachment prevents a healthy mutual love from developing. I'm sorry, guys. I started laughing because I was thinking about healthy relate. I wasn't laughing at what they were saying. I was thinking about, as they were saying, a safe, healthy relationship. In my mind, in the back of my mind, I was thinking about, yeah, when you're with a healthy partner, you experience that, like what it means. You know, my boyfriend now versus in the past, if I woke up like this morning, I wasn't feeling that great when I woke up, and my boyfriend came home and he was very concerned about me being nauseous and wanted me to lay down for a minute. Like that's very different than being in an abusive relationship. But so I was thinking about that support. I love, this is going to be a little bit off topic, but we love a good tangent. This is why I got a little giggly there. I love this show, which is called The Seven Little Johnstons. I was watching it when I was preparing for my show with Angie this morning. And the dad, Trent, is really funny. Like that's why I like the show so much, is he's so funny. But I was watching this episode. I was like, this is a healthy relationship, where they were in the bedroom and the crew were obviously filming the mom and dad having a conversation about one of the kids, and then filmed them turn their lights off like they're going to bed. But the crew's sitting there filming there, and all of a sudden the wife started giggling. And the husband was like, what's wrong? And she goes, I really have to fart, but I've been holding it in this whole time because we're filming. And he was like, let it rip. Just let it rip. First of all, I was like, well, that's a marriage that's been around for about 25 years. Second of all, but that's a very healthy relationship to be able, anyway, that's why I got giggling when I was like reading that. I wasn't laughing at what they were saying. I was laughing at that anyway. All right. A trauma bond is more than an emotional attachment. So let's go down to the 7 stages of trauma bonding. And again, I will try, if I can't get this into the description box, if I don't know how to do that, I'll put this on my community tab when we're done. All right. 7 stages of trauma bonding. When unhealthy emotional attachments are developed during youth, they repeat themselves in many other relationships over time, creating re-victimization and regular relationship dysfunction. In the 7 stages, the abuser intermittently reinforces the positive and the negative, catching the victim off guard. So it's that tug of war between abuse, praise, being put on a pedestal, being knocked off the pedestal, right?
I used to tell my husband all the time when our daughters were little, I would say, all romantic relationships that these girls are going to have in their future is going to be dependent upon the relationship they have with you.
100%. 100. It's actually a shame my boyfriend doesn't have a child, because if he had a daughter, that daughter would be like the luckiest little girl ever. I would probably be the bad cop, the disciplinarian one, because he is so good and just so loving that she would not have any of the issues that I had with because of my relation. Yeah, absolutely. You learn how to love from your opposite sex parent. So, all right. So the 7 stages of trauma bonding. When unhealthy emotional attachments are developed during youth, they repeat themselves in many other relationships over time, creating re-victimization and regular relationship dysfunction. In the 7 stages, the abuser intermittently reinforces the positive and the negative, catching the victim off guard. The victim loses the time and presence to see the toxicity in the relationship, and instead remaining in a state of intense confusion that you think is you. The 7 stages of love bonding of trauma are trauma bonding, love bombing, developing trust and dependence, criticism, gaslighting, resigning to control, loss of self, addiction to the cycle. So we know what love bombing is. And love bombing isn't just, you can compliment somebody, but love bombing is like they overdo it. And they try to mirror you as well. So narcissists will also try to mirror you. So you might go on a date and, with a guy, if you're a girl or guy with whatever, and be like, I love, speaking of rock and roll, I love Van Halen. And all of a sudden the person's like, me too. Now, in some cases, yeah, they could also like Van Halen. But if you start to notice a pattern here where you're like, I love whiskey, they're like, me too. I love this show, Schitt's Creek, me too. They start to mirror you. And they do it so well and in such a charming way that you literally think you found your soulmate. You literally think you found your other half. But they're just mirroring you because you're giving them that sense of self, and they're love bombing you. They're praising you. They're telling you that you're the best thing that ever happened.
Well, I love flowers. My daughter loves flowers. I mean, what girl doesn't like flowers, right? Well, sometimes her room will look like a funeral parlor from this one person. Love bombing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love flowers too. My boyfriend's got
But
me
then they're not
flowers.
even special when it's that many. It's like, okay.
Right. I got flowers one time for my boyfriend. I've actually asked him, like, can you like bring me flowers? He's like, but they die. I'm like, okay, I'll just get myself flowers at the grocery store. So
I can buy myself flowers. Have you heard
Yes.
that song? Miley's
well, my
got my
funny
name in
part,
the sand.
have you seen there's a YouTube or Instagram little clip I've shared, maybe it's from that TikTok-y thing, I don't know. But this girl who's probably like around our age, Angie, she's like, you guys are learning how to buy yourself flowers. Our generation learned that Earl had to die.
Yeah, Earl
We are
had to
not the
die. Oh,
same.
that was a good song. Oh
Earl-
gosh, that's a
We
funny
are
one.
not the same, y'all.
It's
We are
Dixie
not
Chicks. I don't know what they're
Yeah.
called now, but anyway, changed their name, I
Chicks
think.
now. Yeah. So it's love bombing is the most essential step, which enables the abuser to entice their partner into a trauma bond. Here, the abuser lavishes the other person with attention, affection, or flattery, often filling an internal void in the victim who has been longing for true love and positive reinforcement. Usually, the relationship progresses quickly during this phase when the abuser identifies you as their soulmate or professes their desire to be with you forever. And so this works, love bombing works on, drum roll, people who were abused as children.
Mhm.
And that's what they're looking for. So kids who grew up in a really healthy home with healthy parents, they usually are very aware of when something's weird, when like somebody is getting a little, they find it very weird and strange. Whereas somebody who's been abused as a child and has that wound, all of a sudden is being validated, they get addicted to it. I will say though, with my ex who was extremely narcissistic, I've dated many narcissists, but he was like the top dog. I will say, this is something that I did say. I had a friend at the time who knew about, and my ex was someone I grew up with, so I kind of knew him as a kid, and so that made it confusing as well. But I remember saying to my friend, this all feels, as I started dating him, I said to her, this all feels really fast.
Mhm.
And she said, yeah, I was telling my husband that. And my husband said, what's wrong with you ladies? You want a knight in shining armor to come rescue you. And the minute one shows up, you question it. And so that when her husband had said that, and I was like, oh, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm not appreciating the fact that this guy is showering me with attention and affection and already professing love. And maybe it's not what I think it is, because I did know him in childhood. So maybe it's okay that it's going a little faster because we have known each other.
Mhm.
See how that kind of starts to happen. So my initial gut reaction was something's wrong.
Oh.
But then I got talked out of it. How am I not grateful for a man who's willing to be that into me?
Yeah.
You know? And so I thought I was the problem, when really initially my gut was like, danger, danger, danger. Right? So, all right. Can this be true love? The victim is enamored, believing they have found true love. Love bombing fills a void, and the victim has been desperate to fill possibly their entire life due to early attachment disruption. The positive reinforcement feels wonderful. It does make you feel really good when you
That's exactly what I've done over and over and over since my childhood, was trying to find that love that I tried to find from my dad.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
yeah.
When I first started dating my boyfriend, it was he had invited me over for dinner, and I did not know if it was a date or if we were just hanging out. Like I didn't know. And I remember talking to my best friend on the phone, and who's a guy, he's a gay guy. And I went over to my boyfriend's house, and he cooked this big meal, and we sat and we ate it, and then we like did some divination, and we talked about like weird, like I was there until really like 11 o'clock at night, which is late for us. And I left, and I got in the car, and I called my best friend, and I was like, he didn't even kiss me, but I think it was a date. I don't know. And my best friend was like, huh, he didn't kiss you? I said, no, he didn't even try. And my best friend was like, well, I kind of respect him then.
Uh-huh.
And that was the first time I'd ever heard someone say, yeah, okay, he's treating you with respect. He's getting to know you, and he cooked you a big meal and just talked to you, and so that was weird to me, because usually, like, in the past, when I would go on a date with a guy, it was immediately right in there. All of a sudden he's your boyfriend. All of a sudden you're talking about moving in together. And so to move in that slow, healthy, I didn't know I was his girlfriend until
They
he
give you
called
their
me.
keys on the second date.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't know that he was my boyfriend until he called me his girlfriend once. We were like out somewhere and he goes, "Oh, my girlfriend." And I was like, "Oh, that's what I am." And it had been like we had already obviously, progressed in the relationship, but it was still very there was a healthy pace to it. A very healthy pace. This is manipulation, absolutely. In reality, the abuser is setting themselves apart from all others in the victim's eyes, making them believe they're the only ones who will love them, protect them, and nurture them, compelling the victim to let their guard down and fall prey to the abuser's manipulation. All right, be on the alert. So if something feels weird in your gut when you are either dating someone or starting a friendship with someone or getting into business with someone, no matter what other people might say, like, "Oh, but isn't this the job you've been wanting?" If something feels wrong in your gut, that's your alert system saying something's not right. All right. So developing trust and dependence. So now that they have lavished you with flattering gifts and attention, they will do many things to make you trust them and increase your dependence on them.
Uh-huh.
They make promises they won't fulfill. This is called future faking. I think I did a video with Catherine Edwards over future faking. We see future faking a lot in our community on the internet, in our corner of which I'm slowly trying to get out of, because I don't want to future fake people. I don't want to manipulate people. I want to actually be on a journey of the Great Awakening and really understand everything. And be able to critically think and being able to question things, So they make promises they won't fulfill. For example, they'll ask you to move in with them or set a date to get married or elope, following through on the dreamy ideas they shared during the love bombing phase. They promise they will always love you. It's compelling, flattering, and endearing to the victim. Like my ex gave me a key to his place really early on. And I just brushed it off that, oh, well, it's because we've known each other basically our whole lives. So maybe it's not fast because of that, where I felt like it was a little fast, In a friendship, trauma bonding occurs when a person attests to be friends forever and best friends insignia, making the others feel wholly and completely loved and accepted by the other until a later phase. Or they provoke you to question them. Alternatively, the abuser's behavior attempts to provoke you, so you'll question them. They'll make you feel guilty for questioning them after all they did for you during the love bombing phase.
That's what I hear. It's like, I've done so much. I do this. What more do you want? Like,
yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want you to be normal and healthy. That's what I want.
I want you to be normal and healthy.
And listen, if somebody loves you, they're going to do things for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I fold my boyfriend's underwear because I love him. Not because I enjoy it, but I want to make, because I work at home and he works out of the home, even though I work like 16 hours a day, I do try to make sure the house is tidy. I do try to, before I do my practice in the morning, when I leave and go out to the main room, I clean up his coffee, I clean up everything. I put the dishes away. I wipe the counters down, because when he comes home, I know I'm going to be in here working and I want him to walk into a clean front room, right? It's important to me because I want him to feel, but I'm not going to hang that over his head. I'm not going to say, I wiped the counters down this morning or I cleaned up your car. No, I do that because I want to. It doesn't even occur to me to like rub that in his face, because likewise, he's doing things for me. He's making sure the rent is paid. He's making sure that the lights are bills paid. He's making sure the electricity is paid. I also do that with the laundry. I'll do the laundry because he's at work. I'm here. I'll fold all his stuff. I'll put it away to make it his life. So you do things for each other, but it's not what you're doing for each other is not a it's not
a contest.
It's not a monetary bartering system, right? I'm not folding your underwear because I'm going to try to get something from you later. I'm doing it because I love you. And so therefore I'm not going to hang it over your head. Because if I'm hanging it over your head, then I didn't do it because I loved you. I did it because I'm manipulating you.
Which love bombing is that. Love bombing is doing something because they expect to get something. And then once they get it, then they discard.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So think about that. I mean, think about everybody watching right now. Think about people you love. Not necessarily romantically, but just like your friends, your family, your like when my niece, my oldest niece and nephew are at that age now where what they want for their birthdays is usually money, right? Which is fine. But when I was a kid, so my niece's past birthday was in July. She turned 9 years old, I believe. She's 9. And she wanted money. And so I called, and I could have, I ended up just putting money in an envelope because that's all I could do. But I called my mom because when I was a kid, we had the balloon factory and you could go and get like $20 in ones and you put it in these balloons and they tied up and you could pop the balloon. And I wanted to do that for her. I wanted to do something fun, like to give her, because I love her and I want her to have a happy birthday, but we couldn't find anything like that, so you go the extra mile for people you love. You want to do those things for people you love, and you're not doing it as a manipulation. So think about that in your own life, things you've done for people because you love them, and not because you're going to hang it over their head. It's not going to sit in your head that, oh, I did that for this person, so therefore they owe. It's not a tit for a tat, right? But for a narcissist and abuser, it is a tit for a tat. It's always a manipulation. It's always a game they're playing where you're not playing a game. You're actually trying to be in a relationship. So anyway, the trauma bond forms when you find yourself longing for their love, validation, and acceptance, even craving it. It is an indication that you're developing a trauma bond, or said another way, an addiction to the relationship. Here the abuser promotes the unflattering trust they require from you. When confronting the abuser at this stage, you will be criticized for questioning their love. This is why the love bombing phase is so important. This is one right here, right there. They are always able to point back to it as a reminder. So you become firmly bonded.
Remember when I did? You remember? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Criticism. The honeymoon is over. And no matter what you do, it's not good enough. That's it. And when you're in this phase of the relationship, you are desperately trying to figure out what you did wrong to not deserve to be love bombed anymore. Mm-hmm. You become the problem. You were first the answer to their prayers. Now you're the thorn in their side. And it happens overnight. Mm-hmm. The abuser reacts to the victim's expressions of sadness, disappointment, or concern by placing the blame and responsibility onto the victim. They maybe bet that y'all, this light, reading from a computer with a light in your face makes the words a little blurry sometimes, so I apologize. They may begin picking you apart, demeaning your qualities, or making you feel like your values are the problem. The shift in treatment is sudden and in stark contrast to the love bombing in the trust stages, that the only logical reason for the change in the victim's mind is that the victim must have done something wrong to make their partner a change so abruptly. Legit, this happens. Mm-hmm. I thought I was the problem for a long time. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, my ex, even at that point, we were sharing a checking account, and I now know it's called financial abuse. I didn't know what that was back then, where I would go and check the account and all of a sudden all this money would be gone. And I would ask him about it and he would say, I didn't spend it. You must have spent it without realizing it. I would be out in my car trying to find receipts because I thought that I was missing memories. I thought that I obviously was going and buying stuff. And I if he's saying he's not spending the money, then it's obviously me. And so I was looking.
That's kind of gaslighting too.
It's gaslighting too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So turns out he was the one spending the money. Absolutely. Because after a while, I felt so bad that I went and opened up my own checking account so that I wouldn't affect him. And when I had my own checking account, all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, the money's not going anywhere. And then he started asking me for extra money from my work. And I was like, oh, you're the one spending the money, not me. So yeah, that is a form of gaslighting as well. The victim turns inward in self-blame and seeks to resume connection through repeated apologies for things they aren't their fault, hoping to avoid the downward. Yeah, so you start to say you're sorry for things just so you don't get abused. And it appears momentarily that it works. The abuser reluctantly forgives them and convinces them that their actions are meant to help the victim, not hurt them. This positive switch makes the victim believe that they can trust and depend on their abuser, falsely hoping the abuse will stop, but it won't. The deception of the earlier phases doesn't allow you to believe the abuser is the problem. After all, they love you, don't they? Gaslighting, which is, we've talked about gaslighting before. It's one of the most common forms of psychological abuse. Gaslighting is a covert tactic aimed at making the victim question their own reality, perception, or sanity. Gaslighting can include false accusations, inventing false narratives that are the victim's fault, lying, saying anything to make the victim feel they are going crazy, blame shifting over time. The gaslit victim believes they are the ones who need help, not the abuser. Likely the victim is accustomed to gaslighting from their early years, making them automatically internalize it. That was me. I went through a lot of gaslighting at school too. Listen, Linda, a lot of my teachers from my school when I was in high school are now facing lawsuits because of abuse. So that's very validating, is when you see stuff happening. Like, some of my teachers are actually in federal prison by now. So there was a lot of abuse happening. And because I had that as a child, I think it's normal to be gaslit.
Right.
It's
For
not.
me, this reminds me of me being in high school, and I was nominated by all these teachers to be a mentor for my peers. It was called Teens Leaning on Teens, and I think I might have even talked about this before, but my parents had to sign off on it, and my dad wouldn't. He said that because I had too many problems of my own that I couldn't help anyone else. And yeah, I mean, and that was like a big deal to me. Only there weren't that many kids nominated to do that, and obviously the teachers saw a lot in me, but anyway, but that kind of reminds me
That's
of that.
gaslighting, and it's criticism.
Mm-hmm.
How you got something that made you feel good, that made you feel important, and so that can't happen. We got to knock you back down again.
Oh, our friend Anthony is on. I've had two friends recently when we started doing this stuff on narcissism, just real friends in real life here in Athens, that have reached out and said, oh, the word trauma really gets them because they are military. They've served in the military before. And so when they think of trauma, it's completely different thing. And I'm wondering, is it different? Is it?
No, it's not. And that I understand what they're saying. And I talked to my therapist, and I've said this, I think I've told this story before. When I was 26, I started having noticeable anxiety. Little did I know my anxiety had been going on for most of my life, but I started noticing it. Like, I was like going to the grocery store and like having a panic attack in the bread aisle. So I went to my regular doctor, not a therapist, and I actually wanted to get on a medication. I was 26 at the time. I needed something because it was getting out of control. And my regular doctor was asking me questions about what was happening. And my doctor said to me, it sounds like you have PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And I said to my doctor, I was like, but I've never been in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, it doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma. Anyway, years later, in my 30s, I ended up in trauma therapy, specialized trauma therapy. And I was diagnosed not with PTSD, but with CPTSD, which was a newer concept. So PTSD is when, in psychology, is when one event happens to you. So like you go to war and something happens, a bomb goes off, and all of a sudden, that's PTSD. It's one event that changes your nervous system. CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is when things happen over and over and over and over and over again. As one person I watched on Dr. Ramani's show said, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is like getting into a bad car accident. CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, is like getting into a bad car accident every week for your whole life. Yeah. And so I would say to people who are in the military, I understand what you're saying, but there's a part of me that gets very angry when you say that. And I respect the military, I thank you so much for your services. But trauma is not exclusive to war. There are children who are 5, 6, 7 years old that are living in a silent war in their home.
And it's happening over and
Over and over.
over.
They're being abused mentally, physically, and sometimes physically. They're like me. There are women right now in their 30s and 40s that when they were kids showed signs of molestation, but have no memory of it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was like, 15, my uterus started to fall out. That's a perforated uterus or something. There's a term for it. It's a sign of rape. I have no memory of it. So to tell someone that they can't use the word trauma because they haven't been in the military is
he didn't say this yesterday. He just said that the word trauma just kind of, it's a trigger. So it's like he wasn't sure if he could watch it because he didn't know like if it was going to trigger that,
So I would say if the word trauma triggers you, that 100% you need to be in trauma therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to be able to talk about these things, and your triggers should not be ignored, and they should not be put aside and not touched. Your triggers are really important, and they're telling you something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that
this was a text message between the two of us yesterday. He said, never a suggestion of similar situations, but like-minded terrors, but pain is pain. And the more people that empathize with that hurt, the better we all will be.
Yeah. Pain is pain. And I will say, as I've heard my therapist say and other therapists say, when the trauma is coming from something outside of your immediate, like if it's a war, in a lot of ways, it's easier for therapists to work through that because people you loved didn't do it to you. You went into battle. So there's a logical way they can, but when you're working with somebody who was abused by people they loved, there's a complexity there that's extremely hard to work around. So I would say for anybody, there's no contest. Like you don't win a gold star for surviving more trauma than the next person. Trauma is trauma. It's all valuable. And and I would say to people who have that mentality that my trauma is worse than yours, by saying that to someone else, you're abusing them. You're re-traumatizing that person and you're invalidating them. I just saw something on Instagram too. I thought was brilliant. I can't remember which account I shared it on, either my personal one or my show one, where somebody said, I'm paraphrasing. It was like the worst thing about surviving abuse is when you try to ask for help and no one helps you.
Yeah.
And so that's what you have to remember too, for those in the military. A lot of the people who have PTSD or CPTSD who are never in the war, they don't get validated a lot. Imagine being gang raped and then being told, oh, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you come back from war, people are more accepting of the fact that you've been through trauma. So I would ask the military people, respect the victims of abuse just as much as the victims of abuse respect you and what you've been through.
We all need to come up with some badges.
Yeah. Show that empathy. That's the one thing, like when you've gone through trauma, you should have so much empathy for other people who've gone through trauma. Regardless of whether the action was different that was taken upon you, you should understand. I mean, I remember the first time I did, because my big therapy I did was EMDR therapy with my therapist, and I loved it. So what happens when your body is in fight or flight, when you go into extreme shock, you know how we say there's a saying, sleep on it, right? Sleep on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you are handed a stressful situation that you can't process for whatever reason, you can't get to that REM sleep. So what happens in REM sleep, which is the deepest level of sleep, is there's like these neurotransmitters that come from your eyes to your brain. And if you ever watch somebody deep sleep, their eyelids will be flickering a little bit. It's because the eyes are moving back and forth at that time. And it's like a windshield wiper for these like nerves. And so it calms the nervous system down. So if it's a stressful situation that you can handle and process, when you wake up in the morning, you feel clear-headed, you know what to do. But if the stress is too much, you can't get into REM sleep. That's why people like me who have CPTSD sleepwalk, have night terrors, because we can't get to that level because our body is in such fight or flight, it can't do that. Now, the thing about fight or flight being in that stage for most of your life is you don't actually realize that's where you are. You don't realize you're in fight or flight. So the first time, so EMDR therapy, what they do is the therapist brings you into that place of stress. So starts to talk to you, get you back in that place of when something happens to you, and then says once you get there, they take their finger or a light. There's different ways to do it, or they have you listen to music and they have you watch, not move your head, but just watch the fingers go back and forth. And they do it in different directions to trigger different neural pathways. And the first time I did it, my first session of EMDR therapy, I remember getting in the car afterwards, and I was sitting in awful Atlanta traffic because Atlanta traffic is awful, and I was calm. I was really calm. And I thought it was weird because I'd never been that. I never felt that before. And it was the first acknowledgement for me that, oh my God, I've never actually felt this before. This feels good. What is this? So it shows you how old my trauma is.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize it. And then, so that means I probably have been in flight or flight since I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
The next morning I went to teach a lead class, and a lead class in traditional yoga is taught differently than like the Western American yoga, like vinyasa flow. We have a count, ekam, inhale, like we count basically. And usually when I'm teaching a lead class, the back of my mind is thinking about something happening in the future, or what time is it? Am I on a good time? And then that next day I was like really in the moment with my teaching. And I remember thinking, is this how normal people operate? This is wild. Like, this is actually enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so once that started to happen, I started to make these realizations. And so now it gives me, so you have to understand, people that are dealing with childhood abuse as adults they are living in their own personal hell. So it doesn't matter if they've never been off to war. They fought a war internally, and they fought a war. I watched a video yesterday where they showed clips of kids going home, different kids, and some of them would start shaking before they would get home. Like you could see them shaking, and you would see them pausing before walking in, and then they would open the door, whereas other kids would just like go in.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you never know what kind of war zone kids are walking into.
Yeah.
And you see their body start to react. And so I would say that you just have to be very careful with if the word trauma triggers you, you definitely need to see a therapist.
Steve says one happens quick, the other is a long and slow burn. Both have the same result from a mind perspective.
Yep, exactly. It's still, you see, when I started doing second series and the intermediate series and Ashtanga, which is nerve therapy, I started having these body shakes. My body would just start shaking uncontrollably. And somebody was like, you need to go look at videos of people coming back from war. Mm-hmm. And my body was shaking the same way their body was shaking. Mm-hmm. Same result. Different action, same result. So we just need to respect each other and understand that trauma looks different for every person, but it results in a very stressful life that's not necessary. So anyway, so we have the loss. I gotta get off soon, guys, because I have another guest that's gonna come on today. That's very exciting. A big old guest coming on. So so she's gonna talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm gonna put this warning signs of a trauma bond. Let's go through these quickly. Some key signs of a trauma bond include you are willing to overlook the abuse in order to re-experience a love bombing. You cover up or minimize the abuse by making excuses for the abuser's behavior. You lie to others about the abuse. No matter what, you can barely fathom leaving the relationship. The thought makes you feel sick. You adopt as your own the abuser's perspective about the relationship, a hyper focus on the abuser's every want needs, an overly deep sense of gratitude for even the smallest act of kindness from the abuser, intense emotional bond with the abuser, profound confusion and or believing they deserve criticism or abusive treatment, appeasing their partners in ways that conflict with the victim's own values, accepting and agreeing with the perpetrator's point of view, calling anyone who encourages them to leave an enemy. All right. So this is a very thorough. What do you think, Angie? This article is pretty thorough, isn't
Yeah,
it?
well, yeah, it makes me think of like my, my mom and my dad. So I keep going back to my dad. Poor thing.
There you go, Angie. Poor thing. There's
Poor
a good
thing.
girl.
But my mom would say all the, like, well, the good outweighs the bad. And that's what we do. We'll say, well, we went on that vacation and everything was peaceful this time. So, then, oh, that gives you that hope to stay and to try longer. Well, no, the good actually does not outweigh the bad.
There shouldn't
That's
be.
another,
Everybody has moments of being assholes. Everybody's allowed bad days. But when someone's bad day that you're with becomes a habit and a pattern of their personality, then it's not a bad day.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what are some other comments? Since I can't see Angie.
Yeah, mostly just a lot of like, yes, and much love and light to you both. Donald says the kids don't know what type of war zone is behind the door today, so they pause to enter. I can relate.
Yeah. Seeing those videos, I'll see if I can re-find that video and I can reshare it. It's telling. And I think kids pick up on it. And that's the hardest thing. Like if a child's not being physically abused, it's hard to comprehend the emotional and the physical abuse. It's easy to see what it is, but emotional and mental abuse is something completely different. And I was saying, Angie, I was talking with our friend Sarah up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
After we filmed, we were laughing about like prayer circles off camera, because prayer circles in the South are how good Christian ladies gossip.
Little covens.
Little covens of gossip. Lord, baby Jesus, I just pray for Shelly Ann at church today. She had a mighty short skirt on. And Lord, it's a way to gossip. It's how they
It
gossip.
really is the way they gossip. They meet up and, once a week, and they just share like, so-and-so is going through this and so-and-so is going through that. We should pray for them. Like, I don't need you telling your prayer circle.
It's you. I was laughing at sometimes.
It's okay if I ask you to pray for me, then you pray.
But don't tell them. Don't. That's how I found out. I believe that's how I found out our pastor at our church, our preacher at the present, had a toupee on. I was sick one day. I told Sarah this off camera. I was sick one day. It's from school, and I overheard my mom's prayer circle. And that's how I found out the pastor wore a toupee. So at church that Sunday, my friend and I were sitting up in the balcony, like staring, trying to see if it would move. Anyway, but my point of this was in the South, sometimes with not knowing what's happening behind closed doors, we have this thing in the South, and this might be not just the South, this could be, but I know it's big in the South. Well, they'll say, this person comes from a good family. What that typically means is a wealthy family. A good family. So you could say, oh, Brice Watson, she comes from a really good family. That means I come from a wealthy family. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that they're good people. A lot of them are good people in my family, but there's not some good.
Like I come from the wrong side of the tracks.
But I thought that was funny. I said a good family and you immediately went like that. Yeah, it signifies the wealth, because wealth is power. So it's distinguishable people in the society. You want your children to marry into a good family, means a wealthy family, a highly educated family. But being a good family has nothing to do with the moral compass of that family. And so in saying that, sometimes I think it's even a manipulation. Like if you grew up in the South and your family is a quote unquote good family, there's a manipulation there, because good implies good, but it actually means wealthy
connections, all that,
you're polished on the outside. You might have a beautiful home that you live in as a child. My sister and I were raised in beautiful homes. We were not
so polished. They go to the cloister.
Yeah.
The island cloister.
You were not
learn some etiquette, which you can learn etiquette from your mama.
Yeah.
Just from eating at a dinner table.
I had to take cotillion classes. When I was in 6th and 7th grade, I had to take junior cotillion on Sundays after church. All of my friends and I had to go and learn how to dance waltzes and foxtrots, and we had to learn how to be escorted, like what side we stand. And so like the 12-year-olds, like I'm 12, my guy friends are 12, and we're like having to sit there after church in our church clothes and like do the dances and like learn how to eat properly and how to sit, like not because of the way I'm sitting right now, I've got my legs crossed, but you actually cross at the ankle. I'm changing my legs right now to the side. You cross it, you keep your leg, how the royal family sits. That's how we were trained to sit, with your legs crossed, hands in your lap. Women at the dinner table, I think it's what women keep their hands in their lap, men keep their hands placed on the table, like you never both had it. Anyway, listen, I eat in my bed watching
Yeah,
TV.
no elbows on the table.
honey.
But see, I teach my kids these things
Yeah.
just as their mother. They don't need to go
To an etiquette class.
Yeah.
We would get thumped. If we had our elbows on the table while we were eating, my mother would thump us on the head. Mouth closed, all that kind of stuff, napkin in your lap. But yeah, so you're polished, right? So your house, like growing up, my sister and I were not allowed to put like posters on our bedroom walls. Our bedrooms had there were paintings on the wall. All of our furniture were antiques. Our bedrooms were decorated. I think the most kid-like thing I had in my bedroom as a kid was a troll tree. Did you ever hear of a troll tree?
No.
It was something my mom's decorator did in my room. And so I had all these little troll toys, that were big in like the 80s, early 90s. And so it was like this tree, it was spray painted white and it had lights on it. And there were trolls. You put your trolls in it and it held your trolls. And I could plug the light in my room. And so beside that, everything, I had my Madame Alexander dolls that were up in the case that my mother would get for us.
It's how I did my first daughter, my third child. I mean, I can't tell you how many posters and tapestries and incense and everything she's got all over her room. And it's just,
if I had a kid, I'd let them do that. That was, my mother was very Southern Living, very house. Southern Living's a magazine, guys. My mother was.
Well, and Rosie even says, she's like, Mom, when I'll say, I'm not really one of those Southern mamas on Instagram. And she goes, yes, you are. She goes, just look at your house. Just look at your house.
My mother, so I remember my mother teaching us how to hang a picture properly. Like,
it's got a certain height.
Yeah, it has to be, it can't be this high, it has to be down here. Like my mother has like blue willow, that's how we say it down here in the South, blue willow china on the wall, and
Rosie was just saying a couple of days ago, she's like, look how many plates you have all over the place. Plates
all over the wall.
And my teacups. I've got hundreds of teacups.
Oh, that's Southern living.
Yes.
That's Southern living. Very grateful. I had a beautiful home. It was a very Southern living, hardwood floors in the kitchen, beautiful home. Mm-hmm. But that's that good family, right? It's polished. Yeah. But just because somebody's home appears to be polished, just because the kids know how to say yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and just because they have paintings on their wall, and they make their bed up every morning, and they have a housekeeper, it doesn't mean there's not abuse that's going on. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that's where the abuse is the worst.
Yes.
Meanwhile, on the flip side, you could have a family living on the wrong side of the tracks in a trailer with cigarette smoke on the wall, and it could be the most loving, healthy family you've ever seen, where they actually love each other and take care of each other. So, I'll never forget. So growing up, and this was in the 80s and 90s, it's a funny story about my mom's house. And anyway, back in the 80s and the 90s, if we have anybody young watching, your dogs, we had a lot of dogs, your dogs stayed outside. And they didn't stay confined to your house. They ran around the neighborhood with all the other dogs, just like the kids did, right?
Yeah.
And so our dogs basically stayed outside most of the time. Well, if there was like a bad storm or something, like what we had this morning, my parents would pull the dogs into the kitchen and let them, because it was dangerous outside. Well, this is our dog Burlap. I loved Burlap. He was our English setter. Burlap was his name. That dog was awesome. He was with us for a long time before he passed away. But it had been so stormy. That was a Saturday night. So stormy that some trees had fallen. We still had power, but it was a rough night. And so I still remember my pajamas I had on. I had on purple limited two pajamas. I was like in middle school. And I went across the hall to the master bedroom, and I opened my mom's door and I said, "Are we going to church today?" Because it was a Sunday morning. And my mother said, no, we're not going to go today. It's too dangerous outside. And I was so elated that we were not going to church. I was so excited. I ran down the hall and I ran through the fancy living room to get to the family room to watch TV on the big screen. So I was so excited. And my mother had this big Oriental rug. We had a lot of, I have actually one of them in my front room now, but a big, very expensive rug. And I was galloping through the living room. I don't know why I chose to go to the living room. And my foot went smack down into this warm, steamy, hot pile of dog shit.
Mm-hmm.
It was burlap. Burlap had gotten out of the kitchen and had gone into that fancy living room and took a shit on the floor. And I screamed so bad. Now, my mom thought it was hysterical. She was laughing as I hopped. Then I proceeded to like hop down the hall to get to the bathroom to throw my foot in the sink. My mom comes out, thinks something horrific has happened. I got dog shit in between my toes, and my mom could not stop laughing. That was the funniest thing. They cleaned it up. Burlap did not get in trouble. It was fine. But yeah. So that my mom's fancy living room, all of a sudden my foot went right through that shit. So
it was one comment that I wonder if you know something about. She said, I know we've got to go, but where is it? Okay, I'm finding it. Firewater by Design says, Brice, I was in Job's Daughters. Ever heard of this?
no, but is that something biblical?
I guess, and those exact things were drilled into us. So anyway, I'd never heard of that before. So Job's Daughters, I'm gonna write it down.
Makes you like you're a good Christian lady, right? You're a submissive, good Christian lady. You just submit to that abuse and you smile, you just keep sweet. Speaking of, I'm actually speaking to someone in about an hour. It will be airing tomorrow from the IBLP, where the girls were definitely trained to be submissive and to keep sweet, as they say in the FLDS.
I wanted to show Donald, who's still watching. Donald sent me a gift a while back, a box full of beautiful things, and some of it's supposed to go to you too, Brice. And this is supposed to have a candle in it, but I put water in it, Donald, and I'm actually trying to root some asparagus. So
oh, that's beautiful. I can't wait. Donald, I am going to try to get to Angie's house soon.
I'm way so sentimental,
Yeah.
but I love repurposing things. So anyway, yeah, I just thought about it. I just saw that sitting up there. I was like, oh, that's from Donald.
That is awesome. That's cool, Donald. I can't wait. Yeah, I'll go hang out with Angie soon. We're gonna plan on it soon. It's so damn hot right now. We just sit by the air conditioning all day now. But yeah, anyway, guys, I have to go in a minute because I got to go prepare for this next interview. I got to go make sure we're not doing it live. I'm glad that I have a friend like Angie where I can practice these live. So eventually when someone is new, and I'm not going to be like a fumbling idiot trying to.
Well, real quick, to answer our question about Job's Daughters, she says Masons. So anyway, I'll look into that because that's one of my favorite subjects.
You should totally do. Who said that? Who is the subscriber? I'm sorry, guys. I can't see the comments. So
yeah. Firewater by Design.
Okay, yeah. Firewater, can you send us more information on that if you want us, if you want to, only if you want to. You don't have to if you don't want to either my email or Angie's email, because we can actually look into that and talk about it more if you want to, or if you want to come on the show and talk about it yourself, you're more than welcome to. I don't want to pressure anybody. I know being exposed on camera is hard, but yeah, that's interesting, right? Listen.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. And Steve says, bye, Brice and Angie. Thanks for the live. People are really excited that you did a live.
Oh, good. Well, you guys, I'm going to say this again. I said this at the beginning of the episode. If you know how, because I scheduled the live, but obviously the feed that got put to the channel wasn't the feed I had scheduled. If you know how to make the two connect, because I have no fucking clue. Angie's the one that actually taught. She's like, "Oh, you just hit go live on YouTube." And
yeah,
so
but the same thing happened with me. I made a link, and then that link didn't connect with that. But you can go back after this is over. You can easily go back and add that thumbnail to this.
I'll add the thumbnail. I'm
And all
not going to
that.
worry about the intro song or anything like that.
Uh,
Of course, as always, thank you to Asea for sponsoring this channel and allowing us to attempt to do a live right now, and to all of our sponsors. I'm not going to add any of that though, and guys, because it's just too complicated. You'll see it on the pre-recorded videos. The video I'm doing coming up, actually, I'll just go ahead and show you guys. Let me just, because I got to pull it up anyway. Let's see here. So let's see here. So I'm going to be speaking to a little bit later today. Let's see here.
This is tomato juice, by the way. Delicious.
I love it. I was eating when I first got on too. I'm going to be speaking to Davy Jackson a little bit later today. He is a survivor.
Wow.
He is actually, I'll just play this because I think this is really funny. Let's see here if it'll play. If y'all can hear it.
They actually just released a documentary about the cult that I grew up in. Shiny Happy People. Has anyone seen it? Yeah, make some noise. All right. You just watched it last night? And here I am. Wow.
Isn't it? It's on Amazon Prime.
It's Jesus. Jesus sent me. Amen, sister. That's right. You're going to hate the rest of this set. Holy shit.
So that is who is coming on my show
I
later.
can't believe it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I actually emailed him and I was like, I didn't say it that way. I thought because he's a comedian, so I thought I was like emailing his assistant, and I was like, I loved the Amazon Prime documentary. I've spoken about the IBLP before, and I love having a male's perspective because usually the women got it the worst, I would say, but again, trauma is not comparative. And he had done some shows that I was not aware of his channel, but I'd seen him on some other people's channels that I watched, podcasts, and I just thought he was so very well spoken about what he went through with the IBLP. And then I went to his channel, and he did Lake Lanier in Georgia. He covered it. I went to his channel, and he has a big breakdown of the IBLP and what he went with one of his friends, whose name is Brice as well. They went through and did a huge section, and I thought, you know what, this is really interesting. He's funny, but he's also smart and very, and so I'm very excited to talk to him and share his male perspective of everything he went through in that cult. Yesterday, you guys, I will be pre-recording that. So that will be probably aired tomorrow at some point. I just did yesterday, I interviewed Claire Headley from the Scientology.
That was really, really good. That was one of my favorites that you've ever done. I really enjoyed it yesterday. And Firewater by Design, Brice's email is
esotericatlanta@gmail.com. So just my channel name at gmail.com. So I did a show with Claire. I'm shadow banned right now, guys. I could definitely tell because Claire's so if you guys could share that video, it's amazing. Claire's going to be coming back on next week as well. I told her Scientology is the gift that keeps on giving. So there's so much we can talk about. And so we talked a lot about this documentary about Surge. Incredible documentary, what they're doing with the aftermath. So if you guys want to share either this documentary, go to the Blown for Good channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Her husband is hysterical, Mark Headley. They're both like couple goals. They're both hysterical. And Claire is very well spoken, isn't she, Angie?
Yes, very well spoken.
Let me go back to my
it just flowed so well. The two of y'all together, like
she's really so easy to talk to. Oh, look, there we are, Angie. So it's this one right here, and that I released yesterday with Claire. And if you guys can share that, there's so much. I mean, they've been through, fair gaming. We know a little bit about fair gaming in this world because that's called a smear campaign. Narcissists and abusers love to do that. They love to smear you. And so they've been through very serious fair gaming disconnection. So they had a great documentary. So make sure if you guys haven't seen that episode, please go back and watch it. Please make sure to support any of these people that are doing the Lord's work by exposing these cults. We want to make sure that they are. See, look, doesn't Zoom just make you look so much younger and better than StreamYard? So I have in the description box here, I have all the information about Surge documentary, the fundraiser, and the Aftermath Foundation, and all the other SB TV correspondence, because their stories are just unbelievable, and they've survived so much, and they're very inspirational, I believe, for all of us. We could all take a lesson from what they have done.
All right, I've got to log off.
Right.
So bye, everyone.
Bye guys, I'm gonna end it here. We love you, and we'll see you soon. Bye everybody.